This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning. Welcome, members, partners, and guests. Welcome to the Southeast and Caribbean Disaster Resilience Partnership November monthly partnership meeting. My name is Heather McCarthy, and I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director of SCDRP. So here's the agenda for the SCDRP November monthly partnership meeting. First, a little bit what's going on with SCDRP. I am very excited to introduce our new SCDRP program coordinator to you today. And a reminder, we are in the midst of our advisory board election, so don't forget to vote. Next, a warm welcome to our November super speaker, Raquel Fernandez from the Sierra Club. And then we will spend a few minutes looking forward, a few updates on our upcoming annual meeting during the third week of January in Savannah, Georgia. And we won't meet again this way until after the holidays. Our December monthly partnership meeting is bumped 1 week later to January 4th, so please mark your calendars. And then lastly, we will wrap up today's meeting with partner sharing time, so please get your announcements ready to share. First, meet our new SCDRP program coordinator, Tina Jackson. If you would, give a little wave, Tina. There she is in pink. So Tina is a Florida native and a certified wildlife biologist. Tina is finishing up her MS in Forest Resources and Conservation from the University of Florida and currently resides in Gainesville, Florida. Her graduate research has been related to the use of GIS, the impacts of climate change on coastal environments, educator perceptions of the scientist-teacher partnership, and using simulations to teach climate change. Tina spent the first 10 years of her career working in various capacities within the medical field, and then she pivoted to the environmental field where she served a 2-year AmeriCorps term of service with the Naval Facilities Engineering Command, or NAVFAC, Southeast, at Naval Air Station Jacksonville. While there, she gained experience with other environmental medias such as hazardous waste, stormwater, NEPA, installation restoration, tank and spill, air, EMS, and forestry. Tina has obtained over 20 certifications and assisted with all aspects of base environmental program, including environmental inspections, disaster drills, and response efforts. Since then, Tina has worked as an environmental consultant where she manages government projects. She now possesses 12 years of DoD natural resource management experience at over 15 installations across the Atlantic and Gulf Coast. In 2022, Tina founded her own company called Fauna Conservation and Analytics, LLC, a firm that's focused on providing natural resources, consulting, and nature-based resilience solutions for the DoD and other entities. But there's more to it than that. In Tina's words, at Fauna, the science is cool, the work is fun, and the stereotypes are broken. Tina founded her company with the personal goal of providing a pathway for underrepresented scientists to gain experience and transferable skills. And Tina, we're really excited to welcome you to our SCDRP team, and I really look forward to learning from you. Partners, please give Tina a warm welcome. And Tina, would you like to say a few words?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Heather, for that warm introduction. I'm super excited to be working with SCDRP and learning more about the resilience and disaster planning that you guys are doing. Yeah, I'm an open door. If anybody needs any help with anything, please feel free to reach out to me. And with that, I'll hand it back to you, Heather.
Fantastic. And if you ever need to reach Tina, our emails are super easy. She's tina@socorro.org, and I'm Heather at socorro.org. So please reach out anytime. Thanks, Tina. Next announcement, the annual SCDRP Advisory Board election closes this Friday, tomorrow. So be sure to vote. If you are an SCDRP member in good standing with membership and dues up to date, look in your inbox for an email from Election Buddy with your unique voting link and vote by tomorrow. The 2-week election period closes at midnight on Friday, November 17th, and you are voting for 4 open seats. The North Carolina seat, Brian Byfield from North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resilience is running unopposed. For the federal government seat, Lindy Betzold from the NOAA Office for Coastal Management is running unopposed. However, we have ourselves a competition for the two open private sector seats. Holly Jansen Schmidt from Jacobs, Jason Fleming from Seahorse Coastal Consulting LLC, Jeff Morris from Moffitt and Nickel, and Lawrence Frank from Atkins Realis. So these two seats are absolutely vital, as these two professionals will represent the private sector in SCDRP for the next 3 years. So please click on your link from Election Buddy, open your ballot, and read the dynamite biographies and statement of interest from each of these folks, and then cast your vote. Your input and vote is extremely important, and I appreciate your participation in this important process. So thank you to those that nominated your colleagues, and a very special thank you to these folks that have accepted their nomination and are willing to step up into a leadership role with SCDRP. You will guide the future of our partnership, and we really appreciate your enthusiasm. So thank you again. And now it is my absolute pleasure to introduce to you today's super speaker, Raquel Fernandez. Raquel Fernandez is the Florida and Puerto Rico field manager for the Sierra Club, the most enduring and influential grassroots environmental organization in the United States. Prior to joining the Sierra Club, she served as the Communications Relations Coordinator for the Orange County Tax Collector in Orlando, Florida, and served as the Youth Engagement Director for a Florida gubernatorial candidate during the 2018 elections. In her current role at the Sierra Club, she supports the field staff of Florida and Puerto Rico to develop and implement organizing strategies for their different grassroots campaigns throughout the region. She has a degree in political science from the University of Central Florida. I graduated from UCF too. Go Golden Knights. So Raquel, a very warm welcome to you and a big thanks for taking the time to share your knowledge and experiences with our partnership today. It is my pleasure to present Raquel Fernandez.
Hi everyone, how are you? Thank you so much for allowing me to share this space with you. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen. Give me 1 second. Make sure that this is working well. And so happy to see that we have some fellow knights on the call. It's not like I'm biased, but I am. So I'm not seeing the screen, like I'm not seeing you all since I'm presenting. So please, if you have any questions, I would like to make this the most interactive as possible. And I will hope that Heather can help me kind of like lead that aspect as we go. But if you have any question as we go, and I open it up, feel free to raise your hand. But again, thank you so much for allowing me to share the space with you all. My name is Raquel Fernandez Macrop. I'm actually based out of Orlando, Florida, and I'm a proud immigrant from Venezuela. I moved to the United States when I was 16, and before we start this presentation, English, regardless that I manage English and I graduated from an American education. English is not my first language. It's actually Spanish. So today we will be talking about cultural and language justice in the environmental movement. Before we dive into that, I want to go ahead and kind of like first define a concept for you. So, how many of you have heard of the term environmental justice? Can't see your hands, but
I see
if
2, 3, 4, 6.
awesome. Can we pick one person to kind of like say what environmental justice is for them?
For those of you that raised your hand, who would like to define environmental justice? Everyone's timid today, Raquel.
Right, it's all good. It's all good. So according to the Department of Energy, environmental justice is the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulation, and policies. To expand a little bit more around this, coming from an organizing perspective or an advocacy perspective, this means that whenever we're trying to impact policy, whenever we're trying to impact a current like environmental injustice within a specific place, we also have to expand our outreach, and we have to expand our efforts into the community that is mostly impacted, or the majority or the base of that, of what the community is made out of. This is actually one of my favorite pictures that kind of like explains the difference between equality, equity, and justice. So we're breaking down the systemic barriers, but the only way to actually do it is by focusing on the community that's mostly impacted and the community that needs the most representation. Does that make sense? That clear up a concept? Any feelings? Any questions? Why am I defining this concept before we go into the full presentation? I will be sharing with you some statistics and some background of the Beyond Coal campaign, and why it was important for us, for our campaign, to change our strategies and actually develop a group, or basically kind of like not an organization, but a safe space for Hispanics to be culturally free when talking about the environmental injustices or environmental issues within Central Florida. Okay, so 4 years ago, I was hired by the Sierra Club. Sierra Club is the largest, oldest environmental organization in the United States. It's actually approximately 130 years old. And one of the main campaigns that the Sierra Club leads is the Beyond Coal campaign. And that campaign is based on, or like the focus of it is to retire all coal plants and make sure that there is a clean transition from burning fossil fuels into renewable energy. The Beyond Coal campaigns wants to make sure that all those coal plants are closed. In Orlando, known as the City Beautiful or Mickey Mouse House, the city of Orlando is actually powered by a coal plant. For those of you that have traveled into the city of Orlando, as you're flying in or as you're flying out, you can actually see the Curtis Power Station, Stanton Power Station, which is owned by, it's a municipal utility owned by the city of Orlando, of where the mayor of Orlando actually sits on the board. This picture that you see right here, just to put in perspective, how many, like, who can tell me what that mountain of residual is? Who can tell me what, like, take a shot. What do you think that is? You see the power plant in the back, but what do you think the thing in the front is?
Coal ash?
That is coal ash. It looks like cement, it's white. But that mountain of coal ash is completely uncovered. And the closest community, it's literally 2 miles away from that. And is I would say, like a middle class to working class community. You have both an elementary, middle school, and high school within that community, and it's named Avalon Park. Um, a group of citizens a while back decided to embark on a lawsuit because there was a spike on rare child cancer within the same community. Of course, it's very hard to kind of like pinpoint where it's coming from. But for those of you that, live in the Southeast or live in the Caribbean islands, and understand the impact of every, like hurricane season and the storms coming in and the winds and tropical storms, imagine having that. And for folks in Puerto Rico, I don't know if we have folks from Puerto Rico in this call, imagine that also have the same issue. Imagine having that mountain of coal ash completely exposed and getting those winds and just getting them blown into your schools and playgrounds and your neighborhood. So this is why um, the Beyond Coal or energy equity movement started in Orlando. So I'm just giving you kind of like a background and a history. Um, and then we'll go from there. Any questions or comments? I know I didn't put a picture of Disneyland on this slide. This is, we're diving a little bit deeper into the Orlando history.
Now I'll make a comment. This is Jeff Morris, because I know you had asked from the beginning, how do we define environmental justice? And actually, that's the very thing that came to mind to me was a coal fire plant that was basically in our backyard. And then you mentioned, about children getting sick and getting cancers, rare cancers. And I did have a friend that died of a rare cancer, and they thought it was linked to the coal fire plant. Of course, we had friends and family members that worked there as well. And we had, both my grandparents were coal miners. So, but we did see, basic negative externalities from the coal fire plants, like with, how it eroded the capital in the area, like the structures, whatever it might be, statues, but it also, most importantly, on the health of the people in the area. And so that was my that's my life example of like environmental justice, where the coal fire power plant, which was located in southwest Pennsylvania where I live, was sending that electricity to New York City, and we were suffering the consequences of that pollution that was coming from the stacks. Eventually, EPA stepped in and made them put in some, cleaning filters and stuff like that. Pretty expensive. So they eventually were paying the cost, for cleaning the air. But before that, there was a social cost to us in our neighborhood of, getting sick and having, the area get dirty, and but somebody was benefiting from it in New York City.
Exactly, exactly. So when we talk about environmental justice, if we organize in New York City to move towards like clean renewable energy, we also have to think about the community in Pennsylvania that is actually being the one impacted by these environmental injustices. So Avalon Park is actually growing within like the Hispanic population in Avalon Park has been booming, so yeah, that's absolutely that, and thank you so much for sharing that story with us. And mind you, like we don't have wet coal ash ponds like you find them in Tampa, you know, which can actually leak into or have breaches and link into the soil, and we're just dealing with the mountain of dry ash, right? But some of them in some places you actually have those, they can leak into rivers and lakes, so it's very alarming. But thank you so much, Jeff, for sharing that. Okay, so with that being said, I'm kind of like giving you kind of like a history of what the environmental, like the Beyond Coal movement is in Orlando, and we only touched about or talked about the coal ash contamination, but when it comes to fossil fuel burning and a territory like Florida, which is a peninsula, all of that, like the coal, the gas, whenever we bring it in, it's outsourced. Or like we bring it from different states. I mean, so we all, our community is also subjected to like energy burden, right? Paying higher prices because of the fluctuation of prices when it comes to fossil fuels, and also because of the lack of energy efficiency. And the majority of the Hispanic population in Florida are experiencing energy burden. So um, in Central Florida, once we developed the goals of what the campaign was, then we started mapping or power mapping our base, right? And in Central Florida, the Hispanic community, according to the Hispanic Federation, this was a report back in 2016, um, meets nearly 5 million Latinos just in the state of Florida. Um, According to the 2022 US Census, 34.4% just of the Orlando population is Hispanic or considered Hispanic. And then we have the neighboring city, which is Kissimmee, and 70% of the population of Kissimmee considers themselves Hispanic. There is a joke that they said is like the because we have one of the largest diaspora, or the largest diaspora of Puerto Ricans is actually here in Central Florida, and it was actually as a result, or started happening as a result or after Hurricane Maria. So we have this joke, or there's a joke like the capital of Puerto Rico is not San Juan but Kissimmee. So as you can see the numbers, you know, you can see that the Hispanic population in Central Florida is very large. It's like basically like one of three people in Orlando are considered Hispanics, right? Or consider themselves Hispanic. Even though they're pretty, like split 51% to 49%. This is like back in 2016 when it comes to language preference, um, still the cultural component of 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 the of the community had to be implemented into our campaign. So any questions so far or comments? Okay. So moving on. So I wanted to kind of like put in perspective too, because I know that there is some folks from different states here. But the Hispanic population in the United States, according to the 2022 census, is 63.7 million, making it the nation's largest racial or ethnic minority, or at least growing. So 19% of the U.S. population considers themselves Hispanic, and these are folks that decided to actually respond to the census, right? 13 is the number of states with at least 1 million or more Hispanic residents, like in 2022. And you can see the states here, of course, Florida being one of them. Any comments or questions so far, or feelings? It's a big and growing population. So whenever we're talking about environmental injustices, whenever we're talking about disaster resiliency, we have to start thinking on how do we tap, or how do we, I don't want to use the word target, but how are we making sure that we're bringing in that 19.1%, or in the case of Orlando, that 34.4%, how are they participating? So, and I'll dive a little bit deeper into that, but I wanted to like kind of like float that question in there. And whenever, like, in the work that y'all do, like in cities, organizations, like how are we thinking about the fastest like growing minority in the like involucrando, like how are we thinking of like bringing in the largest growing minority group into our work? So we decided that it was important to include that 34.4% of folks. Of course, I'm Latina, so I'm biased, right? And in order for us to win a victory within our campaign, after mapping Orlando's base, we decided that we needed to incorporate that constituency into our work. That meant increase our efforts in translating our written material, prioritize interpretation in every event, collaborate with Hispanic media, and prioritize targeted outreach in the Hispanic neighborhoods. We also expanded our coalition, and outside of the regular environmental group, and we started working with the Hispanic Federation. We started working with Alianza for Progress. We started expanding our coalition, Poder Latinx, into like different organizations that will help us, like do better outreach into these communities. Now, that was our original strategy, right? And once I stop presenting my screen, I want to kind of like, I'll put in the chat how we started developing a landing page, all in Spanish, like translating, and you'll see material. So like this part, this picture, moviendo, hablando más allá del carbón, is like it's a screenshot of the landing page that we created. But what happens is that the strategy started shifting after a while, because even though you're translating material, you're interpreting um if the like events, it's not just focusing on language justice or language equity, but how do we start creating a space that is culturally free for folks that are like from age, basically like age 0 to like your Hispanic seniors, to feel comfortable enough to talk about these issues from a Hispanic perspective, right? So our strategy started like, we started there, but it started like becoming small. So we started running into some challenges, or there are still some challenges that we run into, which is most of the data platforms that we use, you cannot translate, right? Or you cannot put like a Spanish script in it. So whenever we started, targeting Hispanic neighborhoods to talk about the cause, to talk about the movement, and build leadership, the scripts that we develop, we could not input them into, for example, Boat Builder or Van, which is the database that we use to canvas. So we had to actually start using like Google Doc or other sorts of platforms where we were able to create surveys and survey our Hispanic community. The coalition events, even though we started bringing in more Hispanic organizations, it was still, like I was saying, it was still a an English ran space, right? So how do we start shifting that? How do we start like responding to those challenges? And I'll talk a little bit more about them later. But we started to think about creating a space that only focuses on environmental impact, on energy equity, on environmental justice, and that's why we decided to create the Observatorio Ambiental Hispano. Um, One might ask, well, what's the difference between the Observatorio Ambiental Hispano and organizations like Alianza for Progress or Poder Latinx that also focus on environmental justice outreach? Well, the Observatorio Ambiental Hispano is actually a coalition of these organizations and individual community leaders that are putting their time and effort into creating a space where it's only focused on environmental justice, or talk about environmental injustice, ecociudadanía, and making sure that it's completely in Spanish and it's completely attuned to the cultural needs of our growing Hispanic community. So as you can see, we are focused on advancing the expertise of Hispanic environmentalists. We have a lot of folks, and a lot of our leaders actually come with environmental backgrounds from um, um, Spanish speaking countries, from Latin America. So, how are we amplifying their expertise, and how are we even helping them find jobs within the environmental movement? How are we educating the Central Florida Hispanic community on environmental justice issues or environmental injustices? And how are we doing it in a way that both, like the like how many Hispanics do I have in this call? I can't see your hand, so maybe Heather, if you can tell me how many Hispanics do we have in the call
Let's see.
by a
Let's
show of
rate.
hands.
Yeah, raise your virtual hand if you identify Hispanic. I see Tina, Frank Lopez from North Carolina Sea Grant.
Awesome. And I'm talking just from a Hispanic perspective because that's the work that I've done, but in South Florida, for example, there's also a very big Haitian community, and the Haitian community here in Central Florida is also pretty large. So how are we focusing on like doing Creole work, or working Creole, and making sure that we're actually bringing in or like focusing on both language and cultural justice in the work that we're bringing in. So, or we're doing. So, as a Hispanic, as a Latina, as a mom of a toddler, you know, when it comes to family, for us, like we're always sharing the same space, and the issues, and like usually the same issues, we talk about it, like as a family. So so how do we, like, are educating the Central Florida Hispanic community as a whole, and using that dynamic to be able to grow the movement? Any questions so far, or comments, or feelings, or criticism?
Anyone would like to unmute themselves?
Hi. I would just like to say that you're doing a wonderful job at this presentation, very passionate, and I love that. And there's definitely a huge need of focus that's required in the environmental justice area. And I really appreciate the work that you're doing. And we definitely need to do a lot more work in this area for sure. Thank you.
And
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Raquel, that was Sheetal Almas from City of Key West.
Thank you. Thank you, Shita. And yes, and I agree. And thank you so much for that. And as we're doing this work, we encounter these challenges, but as every good organizer, there is not just a set plan. Every so often you kind of like come in and you reset and you re-strategize, right? So and that's why I encourage everyone in this team to kind of like, if you're planning on embarking on doing Hispanic outreach, or like cultural and language justice outreach, like, or movement growth, then I always recommend you like stop, re-strategize, and accommodate towards the challenges. And the best way to do that is also having representation from those community members to be able to help you develop a better plan, right? So just to give you kind of like a quick example. So back in February, we hosted the first ever Energy Equity Summit. We had approximately 100 attendees, and we decided, because we were, like, making sure that we were prioritizing language justice, to make it bilingual. And one of the main feedbacks from the survey of that summit was, we would have loved to have a summit where it was all in Spanish, instead of having the interpretation, and having to use a headphone. And we provided headphones for folks. We had a land acknowledgement made by a member of the Caribbean tribe. So and during the lunch, we played Latin jazz, but the main feedback was, we would have loved to have it all in Spanish. We actually brought in, or my colleagues from Puerto Rico came in, because, as I said, we have the largest diaspora of Puerto Ricans in Central Florida. So you cannot talk about energy justice, you cannot talk about coal ash contamination without actually making the connection back to the island, right? So like I said, we have approximately 100 folks, of which half of them consider themselves Hispanics. As you can see, our material was completely bilingual, but that was one of the main feedback. So we decided, like we said, to create a space that was culturally appropriate for our community, and that's where the Observatorio Ambiental Hispano came to be. The Observatorio Ambiental Hispano consists of a coalition of organizations, government entities, private business, and community leaders, to create this culturally attuned space for Hispanics. We call every meeting Nicho Ecológico, which is a place where folks can come in from all ages to learn about the environmental injustices and to connect with government agencies to be better prepared for upcoming disasters, hurricane season, etc., etc. Um, the first nicho ecológico consisted of, like the opening act was done by a 9-year-old Colombian girl named Mariana. She shared a poem that she wrote about environmentalism, and we had, like, not just like, we had activity for children. We did it was a video photo, so we showed a like a kids version of the video and an adult version of the video. After the kids version, kids were able to participate, ask questions. Then they, like, went to like the back of the room where we had activities for them to paint. But this is all in the same room. We had food provided because it was after hours. So since we're actually wanting to target Hispanic families and make sure that they feel comfortable, we wanted to make sure that they didn't have to rush home and worry about dinner. Everything was provided for them. So then after the adult version of the video, we ended up with a trivia night, and or a trivia session where we had engagement of the attendees and participation to kind of like identify who the leaders are and keep folks engaged. The presentation was purely in Spanish, and we did have some English speakers there, and we provided interpretation actually in English. And I'm gonna show you a quick video of what it looked like, the event. That's Mariana sharing her poem. Those are kid, like the entire family. We had government officials be present. We had different organizations be present. We had religious leaders be present as well. This is part of the that was part of the trivia. And then at the end, we took a big group picture, and the purpose of it is to create that sense of community and that connectivity within the community. Any questions or comments so far?
I have a quick question. Raquel, for this particular gathering, what was the information that you were trying to give to the community? Was it
Yes.
in,
Uh-huh.
go ahead.
Finish your question.
I feel like I recall it had to do with hurricane preparation and um, was
So
that it?
that's the second one. This is the first nicho ecológico, and this was the launch of the nicho ecológico, right? This is where we kind of like see the turnout, saw if, like how things like tested, like the event dynamic,
Hmm.
right? And then as a result, because we invited elected officials, we invited, like city partners, as a result, we saw that there was a need, because we were sliding into hurricane season, right, to talk about hurricane preparedness and hurricane response within the Hispanic community. So, and thank you for that, Heather. So this was the launch, and during this event, we kind of like did a save the date and asked folks to sign up for our next event, and we made an announcement, after this one to keep on like engaging the community. So this was the one that you're talking about. So we saw, and mind you, this happened like October, right? And then we decided to host the next one on September 6th, like pretty quick, right? And So we did our second nicho ecológico through the Observatorio Ambiental Hispano, and this was actually in partnership. No, we did the second one, and then yes, sorry. We did the second one, and this was in partnership with the city of Orlando. We worked with Commissioner Ortiz, which is the Hispanic commissioner that sits on the city of Orlando, and we worked with the Office of Emergency Management for the city, which is the office that takes care of, like hurricane preparedness, whenever there's road closures. I don't think I need to be explaining this to this group. So we actually brought in the Red Cross, and we even have a participant from NOAA talk about how, like the impact of hurricane season. Why is hurricane season getting worse? What does the Red Cross do? What are the resources? And then the city of Orlando, how do they respond? What do the citizens of Orlando need to be aware of during hurricane season? So we did that nicho ecológico, that second nicho ecológico. Um, we are expanding our leadership base, and as a result of the first one, we gained some media coverage, and our expansion with government entities, or like our relationship with government entities expanded. As a result of this second nicho ecológico, we had another tour like 2 weeks later, bringing in folks from different representative from different organizations and community leaders to tour the Office of Emergency Management. And Manny Soto, which is the director, was the one doing the tour, all in Spanish. Showed them how like they make they like make every decision during hurricane season. Why do they close roads? Like, when do they determine that we need like sandbags? Like everything. They showed them the monitors. They took them kind of like a backstage for a tour for the participants. And then the purpose of this was for community leaders and organizations to bring this information back to their communities, back to their organizations, so you can create kind of like a sense of readiness during hurricane season. Does that make sense? Did I explain myself well? Am I making sense? Yes? No?
Yes, you
Yes,
are.
Awesome.
absolutely.
Awesome.
Yep.
So these are some pictures of that event that you're talking about, Heather. We also partnered with the Renacer Foundation, which is also a branch of the Iglesia Episcopal Jesus de Nazaret. And they're like in the heart of the Hispanic community in Orlando. Of course, they're also within the Hispanic district of Orlando. Commissioner Tony Ortiz, which has been amazing and has been an ally, that's his district. So you can see the connection, and you can see the power mapping that we did and how this is working. We're bringing in the constituents to connect with the city, to educate them about the already existing resources, and to also help the city get feedback from folks on the ground and the folks that are being impacted, by these disasters, by these environmental injustices, and hope to create a better process, you know um, when it comes to resiliency, when it comes to energy equity, when it comes to utility assistance programs. So this is how we are translating, or how we're building power within this Observatorio Ambiental Hispano, to be able to connect and make a change within their community. As I said, like some lesson learned and some benefits, where we started first with translating every material, and we'll still do that, because we target both English speaking communities and the Spanish speaking community. But we saw the need of creating not just, how do I explain it? you can translate a presentation. I can translate this presentation, but when it comes to, you know how like everyone learns differently, right? Like I'm a visual learner. I need to write things down. I need to see things, you know. That's just how my brain works better. And in when it comes to the cultural aspect of it, like when it comes to culture, it also has an impact on the way you learn, right? For example, as an immigrant, the way that I, you know, like I grew up in Venezuela learning is different from the one here. We actually even divide and multiply, like our math, you know, like I wouldn't say system, but our math protocol is different from when I learned in from what I learned in Venezuela. So I had to come in here and kind of like relearn everything. So we thought, you know, it's it's necessary to create this culturally free space for our folks, our immigrant community, our older population, and our younger population that is coming in after school into, you know, like talk con la abuela, el abuelo, papa, mama, and bring them into this space to, you know, like have fun and learn at their own pace and in their own way. Does that make sense? And that's what we're trying to aim here, and that's how we're building power within the Hispanic community. And it's not to have two different spaces, it's actually we're merging them. So now, like, part of what we're trying to do with the Observatorio Ambiental Hispano is to provide interpretation, to provide that cultural knowledge to environmental organizations like Ideas for Us or other environmental organizations that might need help with this transition or with this outreach. So so after conducting the surveys, that's what we learned, or that's the feedback that we got. We wanted to make it a family friendly, and we wanted to have appropriate means of engagement for the community. So the trivia nights, the music, the noise, the kids in the background, the playing, you know, like the painting, the poems, you know, and we wanted to also create that political connection and bring in like representation from Hispanic dignitaries, and kind of like also highlight that there is Hispanic representation within um, um, the offices that we're trying to change, right? Or we're trying to do outreach to. And as a result, we have accomplished the benefit of creating a space where people feel comfortable to take on leadership roles. Kind of like saying we're not alone, you know? So thank you so much for that. And with that, Heather, if I don't know if are we good on time? Am I
I
over time? Am I under time?
I do have a few announcements to share with the partnership, and so I put in the chat box your email,
Okay.
Raquel.Fernandez@sierraclub.com. I have a feeling this partnership will have extra questions and want to reach out to you for additional advice, perspectives, suggestions. Fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time today to share your thoughts and perspectives on cultural and language equity. And certainly, as Shital said, we can do better. We need to do better. And so, thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you so
I
much. I appreciate you all. Thank you, Heather.
thank you, Raquel. So, partnership, I have a few more announcements in our remaining moments. Looking ahead, join us in beautiful Savannah, Georgia, in the third week of January for SCDRP's 8th annual meeting. Registration via Eventbrite is now open, so continue to check our website for more information on. You will find our unique SCDRP discounted hotel room block reservation link on both the Eventbrite registration page and on the SCDRP website. You'll see at the top there's a little 2024 annual meeting tab. Please click on that. The steering committee is still working on the final wording, but the tentative 2024 theme is something like this: moving the needle on equitable preparation for for and adaptation to natural hazards. So, throughout the 2 full days of sessions in Savannah, we're going to talk about how we can partner across sectors, how we can work across political and geographic boundaries within our region. We will hear speakers and panelists highlight case studies, successful climate resilience initiatives, innovative public private partnerships, strategies to address inequities, the application of cutting edge data tools and technology, and we're going to host our first ever Tools Cafe. So we will use this time in Savannah together to really make strides towards our vision that communities across the U.S., Southeast, and Caribbean will be more resilient to both episodic and chronic impacts from climate change, natural hazards, and disasters. So let's move the needle together. Here's a sneak peek at our tentative agenda. Let's just quickly focus on some of the social session content that our steering committee is honing in on. We'll hear our resilience updates from each state and territory. For the first time, we're going to tackle the possibilities of regional resilience initiatives and plans. We'll talk about natural disaster preparation community models and what does it mean to provide for enduring resilience capacity, specifically in vulnerable communities. Then on Wednesday morning, we're going to take turns walking down the street, touring the Chatham Emergency Operations Center, and meandering around the Tools Cafe. And then also this year, we're going to reinvigorate discussions around nature-based solutions with a specific focus on how to evaluate success. Then on Wednesday afternoon, we're going to venture into new SCDRP frontiers to talk about resilience policies and regulations, new ordinances, financing and funding for resilience, and hazard insurance, which will bring in some of the keynote speakers from the Duke Roundtable that will be starting that evening. So we're looking forward to some groundbreaking conversations there. So to make all this happen, we need annual meeting sponsors. We'd be delighted to showcase your organization. We currently are offering these 3 different sponsorship levels from $1,000 bronze through $2,500 silver and $5,000 gold. Each one of them comes with an increasing level of benefits. I'm going to jump to the gold sponsorship. Each one includes free complimentary registrations. The gold sponsorship includes 3. In addition to the other benefits you see on the slide, the gold sponsors get 2 pages of marketing materials in our program. You can display materials on a manned sponsorship table that'll be located in the Madison Ballroom throughout the annual meeting. And then gold sponsors also have an option of sponsoring a session. So this includes acknowledgement in the session description and recognition during the session. And additionally, gold sponsors can provide input on the moderator and provide a 5-minute intro to that session, why you think it's important and how your organization is linked to it. So I'm also very open to discussing alternative sponsorship opportunities or donation amounts. Quickly glance over. This is our current list of sponsorship needs. Covers field trips to social receptions. SCDRP just doesn't have the budget for social receptions or riverboat dinner cruises. However, we know that it's often during these times that relationships are developed, innovation is born, partnerships are forged. So we're looking for sponsors for both of those types of events. I'd like to give a shout out, a very hearty thank you to 2 silver sponsors that have come through already, EJ Strong, Environmental Justice Strong in South Carolina, and the Southeastern Sea Grants Consortium. Thank you to both of those organizations. Next up, friendly reminder, next partnership meeting is bumped 1 week later, will be January 4th from 10 to 11. We're going to have a focus on financing and funding resilience at that meeting. We're out of time for partner sharing. However, please take a moment and insert your announcements into the chat box. Oh, Frank, I see. Do you have a quick announcement that you would like to make?
I do, and I'll make it corto.
Okay.
You know, a couple of years ago, we started a scoping process to develop a public health extension focus. One of the things that came out of the discussions with stakeholders was need to improve communication in disasters for people whose English is a second language in Eastern North Carolina. And we're very happy that we've hired a public health extension person. She's on the call today, Sarah Medova. And one of her first projects is going to be working with stakeholders like AmexCon in North Carolina and other organizations to help improve those links in disasters. So this was a great presentation to see, Raquel, the work that you're doing.
Fantastic. Thank you for sharing the work that's coming out of North Carolina. And this is what we're here for, right, Frank, Raquel, to make these connections. So please, after the presentation, continue the conversation, continue the collaboration, and hope it grows from here. Thank you, Frank. So with that, I will conclude our November monthly partnership meeting. Please continue to type into the chat if you have any additional announcements. Very special thank you to our super speaker, Raquel Fernandez from the Sierra Club. And thank you all for joining us today. Have a warm and wonderful holiday season, and I look forward to seeing you all again on January 4th. Thank you and have a great day.